The bulldozer's engine roared to life at dawn, but Karen Martinez wasn't backing down. Standing defiantly in her designer heels on the cracked concrete, she thrust a crumpled paper toward the demolition crew. "This stops now," she screamed, her voice cutting through the mechanical thunder. What started as a simple pool removal had become a neighborhood war one that would cost her everything. Because sometimes, when you fight dirty, the dirt fights back harder. And Marcus Chen was about to teach her exactly. The first crack appeared in Marcus Chen's pool liner on a Tuesday morning in late September. A hairline fracture that seemed insignificant until the water level dropped 6 inches overnight. He knelt beside the kidney-shaped basin that had been his family's summer sanctuary for 12 years, running his fingers along the jagged tear in the vinyl. The pool that had hosted countless birthday parties, weekend barbecues, and lazy Sunday afternoons was dying. $15,000 to fix, or we fill it in and start fresh, Marcus muttered to himself, scrolling through contractor quotes on his phone. This wasn't just about money, it was about letting go of the life he'd built here in Maplewood Estates. "Knew your business before you did." His phone buzzed with a text from Alina. "Dad, just do what makes you happy. We're not kids anymore." His daughter's words stung with their casual dismissal of a place that had meant everything to their family. But she was right. "Complete fill-in, landscape restoration," he told the receptionist. "How soon can you start?" "We can have a crew out Friday for assessment, start demo Monday if permits are clear." A recent divorcee with a settlement that afforded her the kind of lifestyle that came with opinions about everything. She'd immediately set about improving the neighborhood aesthetic, filing complaints with the HOA about fence heights, mailbox designs, and lawn maintenance schedules. Her own property was a testament to aggressive landscaping, imported Japanese maples, hand-selected river rocks, and a koi pond that required more maintenance than most people's cars. The trouble started Thursday evening. Marcus was grilling chicken on his back deck when Karen appeared at the property line, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the golden hour light. She wore white capri pants and a coral blouse that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. "Marcus, I need to discuss something with you," she called out, her voice carrying that particular tone that suggested this wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. He set down his spatula and walked over to the fence that separated their yards. "What's on your mind, Karen? I heard you're removing your pool." News traveled fast in Maplewood Estates. Karen's expression shifted, her mouth tightening into a thin line. "I can't allow that to happen," the words hung in the air between them. "Do you have any idea what I've invested in this place?" She gestured toward her immaculate yard. "I will not watch you turn this neighborhood into some suburban wasteland." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest, but kept his voice level. "Actually, that's where you're wrong." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what appeared to be a lengthy document. HOA, Bylaws, Section 4.7. Any modification to property that materially affects neighborhood aesthetics must be approved by the Architectural Review Board. Pool removal definitely qualifies. Karen snapped. "He's just the president. The board consists of 5 members, and I happen to sit on it. As does Patricia Wells and David Kim, both of whom share my concerns about maintaining property values." Marcus stared at her, processing the implications. "You're saying you're going to block my pool removal? If you want to remove your pool, you need to present a comprehensive plan to the board. Detailed landscaping proposals, materials specifications, timeline, impact assessment, the full package. And frankly, after seeing what you've let happen to that pool, I have serious doubts about your ability to execute a project like this properly." Insult hit like a slap. What's unreasonable is thinking you can make unilateral decisions that affect everyone else's investments. She turned and walked back toward her house, leaving Marcus standing at the fence with his hands clenched into fists, filling the air with acrid smoke that matched his mood perfectly. That night, Marcus researched the HOA bylaws until his eyes burned. Karen wasn't wrong. The architectural review process was clearly defined, and pool removal did fall under the category of major modifications. But the bylaws also specified reasonable timelines and good faith review processes. What Karen was describing sounded more like deliberate obstruction. He called Tom Bradley the next morning. "Marcus, I'm sorry about this," Tom said, his voice heavy with frustration. "Karen's been pushing boundaries since she joined the board. Technically, she's within her rights to call for a formal review, But honestly, this feels like harassment. Can't you overrule her? Not easily. The board requires a majority vote for architectural approvals. Karen's got David Kim convinced that pool removals set a bad precedent, and Patricia Wells has been on the fence. Submit the formal application. Provide detailed plans. Hope they approve it quickly. The process is supposed to take no more than 30 days. 30 days. Marcus felt his stomach drop. I already scheduled the contractor. I put down a deposit. I know. Look, let me see what I can do. Maybe I can talk some sense into Patricia. But Marcus already knew how this would play out. Karen had positioned herself perfectly technically following the rules while creating maximum disruption. It was strategic harassment disguised as community stewardship. The realization crystallized his anger into something sharper, more focused. Karen Martinez wanted to play games with his property, his money, his time. Fine, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. Marcus had spent 15 years as a project manager for a commercial construction company before starting his own consulting firm. He understood contracts, permits, regulations, and the intricate dance of municipal bureaucracy better than most people understood their morning coffee routine. If Karen thought she could intimidate him with HOA politics, she was about to learn otherwise. He spent the weekend drafting the most comprehensive architectural review application in Maplewood Estates history. Detailed CAD drawings of the proposed landscaping, soil composition analysis, drainage impact studies, material specifications with supplier contacts and warranty information, a project timeline broken down by phases with weather contingencies. He even included an environmental impact assessment and a property value analysis showing that thoughtful pool removal actually increased home values in similar neighborhoods. The application package was 47 pages long. Marcus hand-delivered it to Karen's mailbox Monday morning, along with copies for each board member. He also sent electronic versions with read receipts and followed up with a certified letter to create a formal paper trail, just as Marcus had planned. Neighbor issues. I'll pay your standby time if we can't start today, but I want you guys visible and ready. Sometimes pressure helps people see reason. Frank grinned, revealing a gold tooth. Brother, I've been doing this for 20 years. Neighbor wars are half my business. You want us to make some noise. Let's see how the morning goes. At 7:15, the first bulldozer rumbled to life. Marcus stood on his deck, coffee mug in hand. She marched across her perfectly manicured lawn and planted herself at the property line. Part 2. The Escalating. The courtroom smelled like old coffee and frustrated dreams. Marcus sat in the front row of the gallery, watching Judge Patricia Henley review the stack of documents that had grown substantially since Karen's initial restraining order filing. What had started as a simple injunction hearing had morphed into something approaching a small civil trial, complete with witness statements, photographic evidence, and enough legal briefs to choke a law library. Karen's attorney, Richard Blackwood, was exactly what Marcus had expected: silver-haired, expensive suit, and the kind of practiced condescension that came with charging $400 an hour. He was currently presenting Karen's case with theatrical flourishes that would have been impressive if they weren't so transparently manipulative. Your Honor, Mrs. Martinez has been subjected to a campaign of intimidation that goes far beyond simple neighbor disputes, Blackwood intoned, gesturing toward a poster board covered with what appeared to be security camera screenshots. Mr. Chen has deliberately positioned heavy machinery to threaten her property, engaged in harassing behavior, and shown a complete disregard for established community standards. Marcus watched Karen nod, along with practiced concern, her expression a masterclass in looking victimized. She'd dressed for the part conservative navy suit, minimal makeup, and just enough visible stress to suggest she was barely holding herself together. It was a performance worthy of a daytime drama. And Marcus had to admit it was effective. But Marcus had spent the week preparing for this moment, and Richard Blackwood was about to discover that his client had picked the wrong fight. Mr. Chen, Judge Henley said, you may present your response. Marcus stood, carrying a single manila folder. He'd debated hiring his own attorney, but decided that the facts were strong enough to speak for themselves. Besides, he'd learned long ago that sometimes the best defense was letting your opponent overplay their hand. Your Honor, I'd like to present 3 pieces of evidence that I believe will clarify the situation. He approached the bench and handed the judge 3 documents. The first was a complete copy of the HOA bylaws with relevant sections highlighted and annotated. The second was a timeline of events with supporting documentation. The third was something that made Judge Henley's eyebrows rise noticeably. Mrs. Martinez has claimed that my pool removal threatens her property values and violates community standards. Marcus began. However, she's failed to mention that she's currently in contract to sell her house to a developer who plans to demolish it and build a luxury duplex. The courtroom went dead silent. Marcus could feel Karen's shock radiating from the plaintiffs, table-like heat from a furnace. The purchase agreement was recorded with the county clerk's office 3 days ago, Marcus continued. The buyer is Pinnacle Properties, LLC, which specializes in subdivision redevelopment. The sale is contingent on obtaining permits for demolition and new construction permits that would be much easier to obtain if the existing neighborhood character was already disrupted by, say, a contentious dispute over property modifications. Judge Henley studied the documents with obvious interest. Mr. Blackwood, are you aware of your client's pending sale? Richard Blackwood looked like he'd been slapped. He leaned over to whisper urgently with Karen, whose face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Your Honor, my client's future plans are not relevant to the current dispute. On the contrary, Marcus said, they're extremely relevant. Mrs. Martinez isn't trying to protect the neighborhood. She's trying to create a legal precedent that supports her buyer's development plans. This entire dispute is a manufactured crisis designed to benefit a commercial real estate transaction. That's completely false. Karen finally spoke, her composure cracking. I'm trying to protect my investment. Which investment? Marcus asked. The house you're selling or the development deal you're facilitating? Judge Henley held up a hand for silence. Mr. Chen, how did you obtain this information? Public records, Your Honor. Property transactions are matters of public record. I also discovered that Pinnacle Properties has filed preliminary inquiries with the planning department about rezoning the entire block for medium-density residential development. The implications hit the courtroom like a bomb. If Pinnacle Properties was planning to redevelop the entire block, then Karen's concern about a single pool removal was not just Hippocratic, was fraudulent. Mrs. Martinez, Judge Henley said, is it true that you're selling your property to a developer? Karen's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that his actions are disruptive, and it changes everything, the judge interrupted. You've brought this court action under false pretenses, claiming to protect neighborhood stability while actively working to destroy it. Mr. Blackwood, I'm dismissing this injunction immediately. Furthermore, I'm awarding Mr. Chen his costs and attorney fees. Your Honor, your client has wasted this court's time and resources with a frivolous lawsuit designed to facilitate a commercial real estate scheme. Mr. Chen, you're free to proceed with your pool removal immediately. Mrs. Martinez, consider yourself fortunate that I'm not holding you in contempt. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the small courtroom. Marcus gathered his papers, feeling the weight of complete vindication. But as he turned to leave, he caught Karen's expression and realized that winning in court might have been the easy part. Her face was a mask of pure hatred, the kind of rage that went beyond simple embarrassment or frustration. She'd been publicly humiliated, exposed as a fraud, and ordered to pay his legal costs. In her mind, Marcus had moved from being an obstacle to being an enemy, and enemies, Marcus was beginning to understand, were much more dangerous than neighbors. The parking lot confrontation happened exactly as Marcus had expected it would. You think you're so smart? Karen's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. She'd been waiting by his truck. Having shed her courtroom persona for something much more authentic and infinitely more threatening, I think I'm honest, Marcus replied, unlocking his truck door. You might want to try it sometime. You have no idea what you've just done. Karen stepped closer, her designer heels clicking on the asphalt. You think exposing my sale changes anything? You think this is over? I think you're going to have a hard time explaining to your buyer why their development project just became a lot more complicated. Karen's laugh was sharp and bitter. Pinnacle Properties has been planning this redevelopment for 2 years. They've got backup plans for their backup plans. All you've done is make them aware that you're going to be a problem. Good. I like being a problem you don't understand. These aren't suburban neighbors you're dealing with anymore. Pinnacle Properties has $40 million invested in this area. They've been buying up properties through shell companies, working with city planners, greasing the wheels with everyone who matters. You think your little pool removal victory means anything to them? Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. What are you saying? I'm saying you just painted a target on your back. Pinnacle doesn't like obstacles, and they're very good at removing them. Your property taxes are going to get reassessed. Your permits are going to get delayed. Your insurance rates are going to skyrocket. They'll find code violations you never knew existed. And when you finally can't afford to stay in your house anymore, they'll buy it from you for pennies on the dollar. That's illegal. Prove it. Karen smiled, and there was nothing pleasant about it. You want to play hardball? Fine. But you're about to learn the difference between neighborhood politics and real power. She turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing in the parking lot with the uncomfortable realization that he might have won a battle only to start a war he couldn't win. The first sign that Karen hadn't been bluffing came the next morning. Marcus was having coffee on his deck, watching Frank's crew prepare to restart the pool demolition when a county tax assessor's vehicle pulled into his driveway. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Mr. Chen, I'm here for a property reassessment. Got a complaint that your improvements might not be properly reflected in your tax basis. Marcus looked at his house, which he'd maintained but not significantly improved in over a decade. What improvements? Pool removal and landscape modification might increase your property value substantially. We need to take a look. The reassessment took 3 hours and involved measurements, photographs, and a level of scrutiny that Marcus had never experienced in 15 years of homeownership. The assessor was professional but thorough, examining everything from the foundation to the roof. Ballpark figure, Marcus asked, as the man prepared to leave. What kind of increase are we talking about? Hard to say. Pool removal can add significant value, especially in an area that's seeing development pressure. Wouldn't surprise me to see a 20 to 30% increase. 30% would translate to an additional $3,000 a year in property taxes. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The building inspector arrived an hour later. Anonymous complaint about unpermitted electrical work, he explained, consulting a tablet. Going to need to see your permits for any electrical modifications in the last 5 years. Mark. Part 3. The COUNTRSTRAK. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Jerking Marcus awake from the first decent sleep he'd had in weeks, the voice on the other end was unfamiliar but urgent. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Sarah Walsh, Riverside County Sheriff's Department. We need to talk about Karen Martinez. Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert. What about her? She's dead. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus fumbled for his bedside lamp, squinting as harsh light flooded the room. What happened? Her Mercedes went off the road near the Devil's Punch Bowl overlook. We're investigating, and your name came up in some materials we found in her vehicle. Marcus felt the floor shift beneath him. Legal documents, correspondence, what looks like surveillance photos of your property. Mr. Chen, I'm going to need you to come down to the station. We have some questions. The drive to the sheriff's station passed in a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Marcus's mind kept returning to the last conversation he'd had with Karen in the courthouse parking lot. Her threats about Pinnacle Properties and real power. Had she been driving from another confrontation? Had someone decided she'd become a liability? Detective Walsh was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and the kind of direct manner that suggested she didn't waste time on small talk. She led Marcus to a small interview room that smelled like industrial coffee and broken promises. Tell me about your relationship with Karen Martinez, she began, setting a digital recorder on the table between them. Marcus recounted the timeline: the pool removal, the HOA dispute, the restraining order, the courtroom. Revelation about the property sale. Detective Walsh listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on her tablet. When was the last time you spoke with her? Friday, after the court hearing. In the parking lot, what was discussed? Marcus hesitated. Repeating Karen's threats might make him look like he had motive, but lying to a police detective was never a good strategy. She was angry about losing the case. She made some statements about Pinnacle Properties and their development plans. What kind of statements? She said they had a lot of money invested in the area and didn't like obstacles. She implied they might use pressure tactics to force out homeowners who opposed their plans. Detective Walsh's pen stopped moving. Pressure tactics, property tax reassessments, code violations, insurance problems, things that would make it expensive to stay in the neighborhood. And have you experienced any of these issues? Marcus nodded, describing the series of inspections, complaints, and bureaucratic harassment that had escalated since the court hearing. Detective Walsh took detailed notes, her expression growing more serious with each incident. Mr. Chen, I'm going to show you some items we recovered from Mrs. Martinez's vehicle. She opened a manila folder and spread several photographs across the table. Do you recognize any of this? The first photo showed a stack of documents, property records, tax assessments, and what appeared to be Marcus's home address written on a legal pad. The second showed a collection of business cards, including one for a private investigator and another for someone listed as a crisis management consultant. The third photo made Marcus's blood run cold. It was a surveillance shot of his house, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. The image quality was professional, and someone had circled his front door and driveway in red ink. Written in the margin was a phone number and the words 24/7 monitoring confirmed. She was having me watched, Marcus said quietly. It appears so. We found a contract with a private security firm for what they call subject surveillance and behavioral analysis. The contract was paid through something called Martinez Consulting LLC. I've never heard of that company. Neither had we until we ran the corporate filings. Martinez Consulting was created 3 weeks ago with Karen Martinez as the sole proprietor. The interesting thing is the funding source: a wire transfer from Pinnacle Properties for $50,000. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. She wasn't just selling her house to them, she was working for them. That's what it looks like. The surveillance contract, the legal harassment, even the restraining order was all funded by Pinnacle Properties as part of what their internal emails call resident resistance mitigation. You have their internal emails. Detective Walsh smiled grimly. Mrs. Martinez kept copies of everything. Very thorough record keeper. The accident investigation turned up a laptop in her car with what amounts to a complete file on Pinnacle's development strategy. They've been buying up properties through shell companies for 2 years, but they've also been actively pushing out homeowners who might oppose their rezoning applications. How many homeowners? At least a dozen in your neighborhood alone. Tax, reassessments, code violations, insurance problems, all the things Mrs. Martinez warned you about. They have a whole system worked out with corrupt county officials and private contractors who create problems on demand. Marcus stared at the surveillance photo, understanding for the first time how deep this conspiracy went. What happens now? That depends on what we find in the accident investigation. Mrs. Martinez's death might have been exactly what it appeared: a woman driving too fast on a dangerous road after a stressful day. But given what we've uncovered about her business relationships, she didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood the implication. People who knew too much about $50 million development schemes sometimes had accidents. Detective, am I in danger? I honestly don't know, but I'd recommend being very careful for the next few weeks. Don't travel alone at night, vary your routines, and call us immediately if you notice anything suspicious. Marcus left the sheriff's station with more questions than answers, but also with something he hadn't had in weeks: hope. Karen's death was tragic, but it had exposed Pinnacle Properties' entire operation. If the investigation went well, the conspiracy could unravel. His phone was buzzing with missed calls when he got back to his truck. Tom Bradley, the HOA president, had left 3 increasingly urgent voicemails. Marcus, call me as soon as you get this. Something's happening with the other board members. Patricia Wells got served with some kind of legal papers this morning, and David Kim's house was broken into last night. I think we're all in trouble. Marcus called him back immediately. Tom, what's going on? I don't know, but it's connected to that whole mess with Karen. Patricia got a subpoena demanding all her HOA records, and someone tore David's home office apart. They didn't take anything valuable, just paperwork and computer files. Did David call the police? That's the weird part. He says he can't. Says he's legally constrained from discussing it. Marcus, I think these people were all involved with Pinnacle Properties somehow. And now that Karen's dead, now they're cleaning house. Marcus finished. Tom, we need to meet all the board members who aren't compromised tonight. What about saving the neighborhood? They met at Tom Bradley's house at 8 p.m. Tom Marcus and Jennifer Hayes, the one board member who seemed genuinely surprised by the evening's revelations. Tom's living room felt like a war room as they spread out the documents Marcus had obtained from Detective Walsh. Jesus Christ, Jennifer whispered, reading through the Pinnacle Properties emails. They were paying Karen to destroy the neighborhood association from the inside. And using David and Patricia to rubber stamp everything, Tom added, look at this, they have a whole strategy for getting HOA approval for their rezoning applications. They planned to remove anyone who might object and replace them with people they could control. Marcus studied the surveillance photos of his house, noting details he'd missed earlier. It wasn't just about my pool removal, that was just the opening move. They were testing their system could. They used legal harassment and bureaucratic pressure to force out a homeowner who stood up to them. And if it worked on you, they'd use it on everyone else, Jennifer said. One by one, until they owned the whole neighborhood. The question is, what do we do now? Tom asked. Karen's dead, but Pinnacle Properties is still out there. They've got $40 million invested in this project. They're not going to just walk away. Marcus had been thinking about that question all day. We fight back, but not the way they expect. He pulled out his laptop and opened a PowerPoint presentation he'd been working on since leaving the sheriff's station. Pinnacle Properties has been operating in the shadows, using shell companies and corrupt officials to avoid scrutiny. But everything they've done leaves a paper trail. We're going to drag that trail into the light. The first slide showed a map of Maplewood Estates with property ownership data overlaid. Red dots marked houses that had been sold in the past 2 years, with connecting lines showing the shell companies that had purchased them. They own 37 properties in our neighborhood, Marcus explained, all purchased through different LLCs, all connected back to Pinnacle Properties. The average purchase price was 20% below market value, which suggests they were pressuring homeowners to sell. The second slide showed a timeline of city planning meetings, zoning applications, and permits, all correlating with Pinnacle's property acquisitions. They've been coordinating with city planners for over a year